In 1999, West End Games lost the rights to produce Star Wars, the role-playing game, their D6 role-playing adventure set in the Star Wars universe. Wizards of the Coast took over the license starting in the year 2000 and introduced Star Wars Roleplaying Game. Yes, there's just one word difference, which was a D20 role-playing adventure set within the Star Wars universe. Wizards of the Coast released a number of source books to flesh out the game with new characters, new creatures and planets and ships and possible campaigns. And thus we had the release of the new Jedi Order Sourcebook in 2002. You may be thinking, but didn't the new Jedi Order series not wrap up until 2003? And you would be right, because the new Jedi Order Sourcebook only covers events from Vector Prime to Star by Star. There was no additional sourcebook with the second half of content from the new Jedi Order series, but this isn't really a reference book. It's more intended for game masters who wanted to run their own Star Wars role-playing game set during the new Jedi Order events. We get synopses of each of the books or duologies. We get character stats and ways that you could formulate different characters, whether they be Jedi aces or members of the Peace Brigade. And then there's a lot of suggestions of how the game master could run the campaign, depending on where you wanted to set it in the timeline. So I would say the new Jedi Order Sourcebook is very niche content. It is primarily focused on the Star Wars role-playing game. It's not really a reference book in the way that the essential guides are reference books, but it's mostly a lot of information so that a game master could put together a campaign for players. There are illustrations which are fun to see, but not as many of them as I would have hoped, and a lot of them are just character portraits, when I was more interested in what do their ships look like, what does this look like, what does that look like, and that's not really what you're going to find here. The first chapter in particular has a lot of information about the Yuuzhan Vong, but it's also information that only goes up through Star by Star by Troy Denning. And there's a lot of revelations to come that just aren't present in this book because of when it fell in the timeline. I really loved the essential guides when I was younger, particularly the essential guides to vehicles and vessels, because I really liked the cross sections of ships and getting to see their dimensions and how big they were and everything that was inside them. And that's not what you'll find here, because that's not what this is meant to be. There are some weird errors, like Gavin Darklighter is described as Biggs's younger brother when he's not, he's his cousin. And in the galaxy map, they consistently put Belkaden closer to the edge of the galaxy than Helska when it should be the other way around. But there was a lot of interesting information there, even if I think it maybe would have been better if I read it earlier in the series, because it doesn't cover anything from Dark Journey onwards. So if you have any interest in the Star Wars role-playing game or in some basic information about the new Jedi Order series, you might want to check out the new Jedi Order Sourcebook. I'll put a link to the PDF down in the description. In 2008, Karen Traviss announced that she would be writing The Essential Guide to the Star Wars Military. But when Traviss left the Star Wars universe, the book was retitled The Essential Guide to Warfare and instead written by Jason Fry. It was meant to be released in 2011, but the release date got pushed back finally to 2012. The Essential Guide to Warfare covers a very long span of Star Wars history, from the very early days of the Old Republic all the way to the Legacy era, which is over 100 years after Return of the Jedi. But I don't want to talk about any of those. I just want to talk about the 10-page chapter on the new Jedi Order. There are some really weird bits in here that I honestly found surprising. A lot of The Essential Guide to Warfare is written as though it's in-universe, so we get a debriefing with Tahiri Vela, we get an unnamed person's essay about the history of the Yuzin Valn conflict, and then we start right off the bat with this recording in which Vergere is talking to Tahiri Vela when she was captured by the Yuzin Valn, and what? But it definitely makes it seem like Vergere and the people she influenced were trying to bring down the Yuzin Valn culture from the inside. And so capturing Tahiri and shaping her was specifically meant to upset the Jedi in the galaxy at large and make them get more involved in the conflict. It's really weird. We also have a debriefing where Tahiri Vela is talking to Rostic Horn, who is Corran Horn's grandfather. I guess he's still alive. But it's talking as though the Yuzin Valn side of her and the human side of her are perhaps more integrated than they would have been at that time in the timeline. We also get completely bonkers revelations, like the Slayers, who we met in The Unifying Force by James Luceno, were actually samples they took from Jedi, and so I guess the implication is that the Slayers aren't even Yuzin Valn, they're human? What? And then the last part of the chapter is this anonymous essay about the history of the conflict, which was interesting, but I'm not always sure how it meshed up with the story we were given in New Jedi Order. It made it seem as though Admiral Sov was directly involved with the military approach to the Yuzin Valn from the very beginning, when it felt a lot more fractured to me while I was reading the books. Like with the New Jedi Order Sourcebook, there are pictures, but there's not a lot of them, and they're not particularly descriptive. They seem more there for illustrative purposes. But if you're interested in checking it out, I'll put a link to a PDF of just the New Jedi Order chapter down in the description box so you can look at it yourself and also see how surprisingly crazy this short 10-page chapter was. So next time, I have been working on almost a post-mortem of the New Jedi Order series, looking at the series as a whole, its overarching stories, characters' developments from the very beginning to the very end, and sort of my general thoughts on that. So not a book per se, just more analysis.